Good morning. The time is now 10:13, and I would like to call this meeting of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises to order. Just remind everyone that this is our inquiry into the operations of the National Infrastructure Development Company Limited, NIDCO, including its compulsory land acquisition in relation to major projects. I would also like to say welcome to what is really a historic meeting. Not only is this the first virtual meeting of our Joint Select Committee, today is also Carnival Monday. I'm not sure if there's ever been a parliamentary sitting on Carnival Monday. Under normal circumstances, most of us would be heading home after Sunday night festivities and Juve. But here we are today. So thank you all for being with us under these unique circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Vera, and I would like to extend a very cordial welcome. We appreciate your attendance here today. Before I ask committee members to introduce themselves formally for the record, may I just indicate that Member McClashy has asked to be excused. I would now ask committee members to kindly introduce yourselves.
Good morning. My name is Senator Wade Mark, member of the committee.
Good morning. My name is David Lee, member of the committee.
Good morning all. Sorry, go ahead.
My name is Foster Cummings, member of the committee.
Good morning. I'm Paula Gopi-Schoon, member. Thank you.
Good morning all. My name is Laurel Lizama Leasing and I am a member of this committee.
Thank you. Now, may I ask those who will be giving evidence today to please introduce yourselves, starting with NIDCO, then the Ministry of Works of Transport, and then the Ministry of Finance. NIDCO.
Good morning all. My name is Herbert George. I'm chairman of the board.
Good morning all. My name is Esther Farmer. I'm president of NIDCO.
Good morning. I am Vernie Shield, chairman of the Audit Committee of NIDCO's Board of Directors.
Good morning all. Stephen Gardner, deputy chairman of the board.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Garib Singh. I'm vice president engineering.
Good morning all. My name is Roma Surat Singh, manager of finance and corporate planning.
Ministry of Works.
Hello, good morning all. My name is Sonia Francis Yearwood, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Transport. In the room with me, I also have Candida Hart, Senior Planning Officer, Ministry of Works and Transport, and Mr. Wesley Gajada, Legal Officer, Ministry of Works and Transport.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance.
Good morning all. Ryan Maraj, Director, Agrobase, Manufacturing and Services Sector, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nadira Lider, Project Implementation Advisor, the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you. Well, before we start the official proceedings, just a couple housekeeping matters. Please remember that we are participating in a public hearing which involves a video link. Hearings by electronic means are conducted as though you are physically present. So when speaking, please do so clearly and directly, but not too quickly in case there's a time lag. You should look directly into the camera and not move out of range while the hearing is in progress. Also be mindful of rustling papers and try to avoid multitasking and background noises, such as cell phones ringing while the session is in progress. Time is limited, and we hope to conclude by 12:30. So I will be trying to keep us on time as there is a lot to cover. Participants that we proceed by question and answer. We want to find out information and views from the witnesses, not take up time telling our own views. I encourage everyone to keep questions and answers as brief and as focused as possible so that we can maximize the number of persons who have an opportunity to contribute. Let's talk one at a time, stay on point, try not to interrupt when someone is speaking. Raise your hand if you want to speak. You can also move the discussion forward by emailing questions and comments. I would also want to remind members that we are live on the Parliament channel, Parliament Radio, and Parliament YouTube. And viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement via email at parl1101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. Remember, the purpose of this inquiry is into the operations of NIDCO, including its compulsory land acquisition in relation to major projects. I would also remind participants that this session offers a forum for you to share your challenges, your disappointments, and your achievements. A forum to voice concerns, to make recommendations. It's a unique opportunity to increase public awareness, understanding, and support in respect of your operations. So I'm going to open the floor now. I will invite the chairman of NIDCO to make some brief opening remarks and to provide us with some salient information about NIDCO. Thank you. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we welcome the opportunity afforded us to appear before your August committee to participate in this inquiry and to provide evidence as you may require. We are, at NIDCO, as government's executing arm of its major infrastructure development projects, we are mindful of the public's high expectation for the services that we must deliver. That expectation is undiminished, even in lean economic times. Only a few days ago, on February 10, at a press conference, the Minister of Finance and Corporation Sole apprised the nation of the parlous state of our economy, but gave assurances that construction would continue to be an important tool in terms of stimulating the economy and also employing people. As such, he promised to keep construction projects going. And that happens to be our core activity at NIDCO. So NIDCO's response must be to do well and deliver the goods and services for which it was set up. We agree that there is no substitute for efficient and comprehensive infrastructure in opening a country to development and greater economic activity for its people. A tourism that is not lost on the corporation's soul, and indeed, by extension, the government. In this regard, we are seized of the fact that when resources are scarce, we need to operate at optimum levels and utilize the little that is available in a manner that will minimize waste, breakage, and poor returns. This we have accepted as our irrevocable mission in striving to fulfill our purpose. We therefore look forward to answering your queries and to receiving any guidance that you may wish to offer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. George. I'm opening the floor now to members. Member Mark.
Let me join the chairman in welcoming all officials from NIDCO, the Ministry of Works and Transport, as well as the Ministry of Finance. May I direct this question at Mr. Garner or whoever he deems necessary or fit to respond? In your submission, Mr. Herbert Garner, or Mr. Herbert George, I should say, page 16, question 33. You provided, that is NIDCO, a table entitled Staff Allocation and Costs for the period 2016 to 2020. I would like to ask, on behalf of the committee, what is the reason or reasons for the significant fluctuations in your staff numbers, particularly from 2016 to 2018? And as you are responding, may you also advise us the composition of your staff in terms of those who are permanent, those who are on contract, those who are temporary and or casual. That's my question to Mr. Herbert George.
Okay, all our staff is employed via contracts. So all our members are on contracts. What caused the fluctuation? In 2016, we did a right sizing exercise and considered what level of staffing was required to carry out the activities of the enterprise. So in going from 2016 to 2017, one will see that the results of the right sizing. But as we went along, and the vessels came on stream, so there was the Galleon's Passage first, and now we have the two new builds. We had to recruit staff to man those vessels. So so that would have resulted in a fluctuation that Member Mark refers to. So basically, that is what has caused the fluctuation.
Yeah.
And secondly,
okay, go ahead, Mr. George. No.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Proceed, Mr. George. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Member Mark. So that is the reason for the fluctuation that you see in that table. Thank you.
Oh, all right, Mr. George, you must have had a policy position as it relates to your right sizing. Would you be kind enough to supply to the chairman or the secretary of our committee in writing the policy position adopted in your right sizing exercise, and what was the cost associated with that exercise in terms of relieving or reducing your staff? So you can put that in writing and make that available to our secretariat. I'll go on briefly to my second question, and that has to do with, you also stated on page 19, question 41, that NIDCO usually retains appropriate external counsel for litigation proceedings, and that over the 5 years, I would like to ask, over the last 5 years, could you share with this committee how much has NIDCO expended on external counsel and other expenses related to litigation proceedings? Can you share that information with our committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I should like to have those submitted in writing, please.
Okay. In your submission, Mr. George, on page 4, question 6, you indicated that on a job-by-job basis, there were some gaps in what is called your required skill set. NIDCO therefore had to procure the services of external expertise to boost its competences. Could you provide this committee with examples of instances when outsourced expertise would have been required, and also the cost of externally procured expertise over the past 5 years?
Can we have that treated the same way, Mr. Chairman?
As you're treated that the same way, Mr. Herbert George, this is a public hearing, and I want to advise, and maybe the chairman can advise, whilst we welcome things in writing, we would like to get answers as well to our questions, even if you have to give us a tight summary, and then you will then proceed to put it in writing. But I do not believe it would be appropriate for us to be accepting everything being put in writing, because we wouldn't really be able to achieve our objective as a committee. So would you be kind enough to also put in writing your, when you said that when you did a job-by-job analysis, you discovered what is called gaps in your required skill set, you would have had a policy document driving this process, won't you?
Oh, well, all right. Let me attempt to throw some light on this. Depending on the jobs that we are required to do, the first, our first approach is to see whether we have the in-house competence to carry out all aspects of the job. So, for example, when we were given the assignment to purchase the vessel, we would have, well, we recognize that we did not have all the expertise available at NIDCO. So we would have sourced the expertise from the port, right? And they kindly, consented to work with us. And way of handling it. If we are required to do the design of a facility, we usually outsource that to competent designers. So that is what we are referring to when we said that, where there are gaps in our skill set, we will go outsource those technical competencies to carry out the activities that we are assigned to. But
Mr. George,
yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. George, could you share with this committee how many persons or personnel or experts you would have been able to source from the Port Authority, as well as the cost associated with the procurement of those services?
Well, those are not secured on a on a cost basis. The request is made and the port will work together with us as required. So it is not a case of, secondment or our going out there and procuring the services in the sense that they come and provide their expertise for a fee. It is done as attempt to assist as required.
Thank you. Member Mark, could we?
I'll pause it at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Lee, you had some questions?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Just a follow-up on the HR aspect. Question on the NIDCO's brief, question number 46 on page 20. In respect to the NIS, the NIDCO's NIS and PAYE commitments, I noticed on question 46 that they said NIDCO monthly NIS and PAYE commitments are up to date. But when I looked at table 3, there were some issues in 16, 17, and 18 as far as non-payment of the statutory payments to PAYE, NIS, etc. Could the chairman inform this committee what is the situation with those arrears, and is NIDCO currently up to date as far as meeting all their statutory requirements as we speak today?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I can do that, and I will say yes, we are up to date, and I will, with your permission, defer to our financial manager to give us the details of what I have said.
Thank you.
Good morning, members. With regard to the monthly commitments that are derived from the usual payroll processing, we are up to date. However, what the member is referring to are payments related to 2016 to 2018, where we would not have been making those payments on time. However, as at 2019 March, we were able to bring all those principal payments up to date. And we have been making payments on an installment basis to cover penalties and interest as it relates to the NIS. And we are waiting BIR's decision in relation to any outstanding penalties and interest that we would have, I guess, attracted during the period of non-payment. So we have asked for an appeal of their decision.
Just a follow-up question, Chair, to the finance manager. Those penalties that you would have paid in respect to those 3 years to NIS, how would that have impacted on your cash flow situation or even your bottom line? Because you would have had to utilize funding to pay these penalties that could have been avoided if, I guess, allocations were being sent from the Ministry of Finance on a timely basis. So it would have impacted your bottom line. And we are hoping as a committee that these things does not continue going forward, because it would affect the employees at your company in respect of the NIS payments, etc.
Okay, thank you, member. In relation to the affecting of the bottom line, you would recognize that up to 2018, we would be showing a loss position in our performance assessment that we would have sent to you. The reason for that would have been that we would have been making significant accruals for these penalties and interest. So it did affect the bottom line in terms of how we were able to make the payments. In 2009, you would have realized that that is when the majority of the settlement would have taken place. What we would have attempted to do is, as the management fees and payments started to come in, we would have started to make those allocations back then. 2016 to 2018, the allocations were much less than coming in, and as a result, that is why we had to have the non-payments and incur the penalties and interest. And going forward, it is our commitment to ensure that these payments are made on time, and that we will be having enough of the management fees and the payments of same so that we can continue to make it on time.
Thank you. That's it for me at this point in time, Chairman.
Thank you, Member Lee. Member Gopi Schoon.
Thank you, Chairman. And NIDCO has huge responsibilities in terms of the substantial contracts which they carry out on behalf of the state of Trinidad and Tobago. What is the status of the audited accounts? Our understanding is that it is completed up to fiscal 2017. I asked the status in terms of what is the reason for the delay. Is it because of internal accounting, internal accounting on auditing procedures that are not up to date? And in the absence of the audited accounts, what monitoring mechanisms with regard to your financial operations and how are these being measured in terms of accountability, both internally and externally?
Once again, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to defer to the financial manager. Pardon me? Oh.
Okay. Good morning again. Thank you, member. In relation to the audited financial statements, you are correct. We have up to 2017 completed. We're in the process of finalizing 2018. Some of our delay would have been a combination of factors. The most important one and glaring one would have been the impact of COVID-19 on wrapping up the audit, because there would have been a suspension and a re-engagement period that would have pushed us back further than we would have liked to have been. But we do expect to have the audited financial statements ready in short order. Within a month, I would tentatively offer to the committee. With regard to monitoring mechanisms outside of the audited financial statements, every month we are required to report to the board on the performance of the company via management accounts and analysis of same. That activity looks at our performance year to date and monthly and provide explanations for any variances that require.
Thank you. But is it that you're going to have both 2018 and 2019 within a month?
No, member, just the 2018. 2019 would require re-engagement of an external auditor, and we would have to go through the process of getting approval from the Ministry of Finance, etc., before the commencement of the 2019 audit process.
We talked about the the question of how accountability is demonstrated internally, and you spoke about the management accounts that are produced. Are there any other measures by which you measure internal accountability?
Could you, member, be more specific in terms of financial reporting?
In terms of your internal audit processes and so on, and policies.
Okay. Well, we do have an internal audit function, and I am not completely privy to all of the reporting requirements in that function because that goes straight through the audit committee to the board. So I would defer to chairman and we'll take it from there.
Member Gopi Schoon, may I just ask a question? You are 4 years behind with your audited accounts. Is that a satisfactory state of affairs? I mean, shouldn't NIDCO be aiming to be more current with its audited accounts? You are one of the major spenders of taxpayer dollars. You supervise and are responsible for major infrastructure development. Are you aspiring to be more up to date? Can you please explain?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we are. I mean, it is a focus for us to have all of our financial statements up to date. However, there is a process involved in each auditing period. So the reason why I hesitant to give a deadline with the 2019 is because we had to we were instructed to go out and engage a new audit or go out to tender for the new auditing period. So that in and of itself and the appointment of the auditors are things that we also work with the Ministry of Finance to do. So it's not strictly within NIDCO's control. As soon as we are able to have that process started, we will be ready to go with the 2019 audit and similarly in 2020 as well.
Member Gopi-Skoon, please continue.
Yeah, my question is to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Works and Transport. In the absence of the audited accounts, how do you monitor and ensure that there is accountability in terms of contracts, in terms of its financial positions, etc.?
Yes, good day, Member Gopi-Skoon and committee members. So, the ministry seeks to monitor NIDCO in keeping with the State Performance Monitoring Manual, and there are documents that are submitted by NIDCO in terms of their quarterly returns to the ministry and to the Ministry of Finance. There is also, in terms of contracts, the undertaking of contracts, entering in approvals, entering into a contract, and implementation of contract does follow a process, and the ministry is involved in terms of the project definition and approval stage. It passes through the ministry to the cabinet for approval. Subsequent to that, in terms of expenditure, the expenditure is via allocations under the Public Sector Investment Program in the main, and there is a process in terms of each payment via a payment certificate that is undertaken by the ministry once the documentation is submitted by NIDCO. So there is a review by the ministry in terms of the expenditure based on the project. Hope I have answered your question, member. If not, please let me know what area you may need further information.
Just a further question. Are you up to date in terms of minutes from the board? Do you, in the absence of the audited accounts, do you look at the management accounts?
Yes, member, the board does provide the minutes of their meetings on a timely basis. And we do get, if not the audited documentation, we will get the unaudited documentation.
Monthly? Monthly?
We will not get the management accounts monthly, member. No, we would not.
Sorry.
But we would get the board minutes. Yes, we would get them on a monthly basis.
Good. Thank you. If I'm allowed to do a second question, Chairman, it would be concerning NIDCO's operations, in that NIDCO's revenues are dependent on its fee structure, in that there are fees attached to every contract that is awarded, if I'm putting it right. And now, looking at your maritime services operations, you are operating in the red, and it is the numbers are quite huge. When I look at the audited financial statements for 2016, it's 54 million in debit. In the red, when I look at 2017, it's another 54 million. When I look at the unaudited financial statements, 46 million, and this is at September 2018. How does this affect your normal operations? Are you given any fees for management of the maritime services missions? See you as an organization curing this situation, which is detrimental, of course, to your cash flow. And what do you have to say on this?
Not hearing. You might be on mute.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll just briefly say that the maritime operations are financed through government subvention. But we were in arrears in those years stated because we might have done some purchasing. So that might have been the reason for those arrears. But I can, with your permission, defer to the financial manager for some more details.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman is correct in saying that the management operations are fully benefit from subvention from the government. Our offset to that is that we manage costs very tightly with those operations to ensure that any shortfall that the government has to supply us is as minimal as possible, because the only offset in terms of our revenue for maritime operations would be the ticketing income for largely the water taxis. And that is also subsidized by government in terms of it's meant to be at a relatively low amount. I hear the members' concern. Having said that, however, in terms of NIDCO's overall performance and operations, because the maritime operations benefit from the subvention, we normally, it's fully offset by the subvention. So the performance of NIDCO is really the net of NIDCO's revenue and its operating costs. So it does not roll up into the net profit or loss of the operations of NIDCO itself. I hope that answers the member's question.
Yes, it does. So I understand clearly the separation with the maritime services operation and the NIDCO's operation. But even so, NIDCO itself, it's an improved position, but I'm seeing that the loss carried forward is a smaller amount. What are you doing to ensure that you control expenses and that you operate profitably?
Okay, so I would ask the member to also refer to, thank you for the question, to refer to 2019 and 2020 performances for NIDCO, where we are looking unaudited at a profitable position. One has to keep in mind that back in 2016, into late 15 into 16, there would have been a slowing down of the projects with the transition of governments, and those things would have also impacted the net position of the company in those years, and they would have had an impact even going into 2017. So we do understand and hear the concern in terms of the performance of NIDCO, but we have to take into consideration the variables that would have impacted the operation and the finances back then. In terms of how we manage now, we are aggressively looking at cost containment. That is something that we push. It is part of our organizational philosophy. And with regard to the revenue aspect of it, as the projects come along, we do from time to time ask for review of the management fees offered within reason, understanding that everything is coming from the public base.
Chairman, I'm not sure whether I should go on to value for money or whether you'd want to allow another member.
Thank you, Member Gopi-Skun. I think at this point, I'd like Member Cummings to have a chance to ask his questions. Thank you.
Are you hearing me now, Chairman?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to deal specifically with some of the PSIP priority projects. And it's specifically to the chairman to get an update from him in terms of the project that involves the highway extension to Manzanilla. I've seen the response that it is at phase 1, but if the chairman could give us some details on that, please, and then I have a follow-up question based on his response.
Okay, so the highway extension to Manzanilla, there are many items of work being done on that highway. Our first phase had to do with the 5 kilometer from Kumuto to Eastern Main Road. that work is in progress. While that was being done, we sought to complete the design for the connection between the Churchill Roosevelt and Kumuto. The designs have been done, and the procurement of a contractor is the next stage. But before that is done, we have some land acquisition to take place on that leg of the highway. So that is being addressed as well. We had to do a continuation of the designs from the Eastern Main Road on the east onto Toco Road, I think, just after Sangre Grande. That design has been completed. And then we have to pursue the CEC. The CEC required an EIA. The EIA has been done, submitted to the EMA, and they sent out their review and appraisal report, which we have addressed and sent back to them. So we are waiting the further rulings or granting of the CAC for the continuation of the actual construction work beyond the Eastern Main Road not the Eastern Main Road, sorry, just beyond the 5K section. What's the name of that road again? Guayco, sorry, Guayco. Okay, so that's where we are with that highway.
Chairman, if you can just speak a little bit about the land acquisition issues. Are you speaking about the Waterfield area? And if so, can you give us an update on how that is advancing?
All right, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I want to defer to the President to give us an update on that item, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are several land acquisition processes going on because there are several links. So if we take the section from where the 5 km ends and we are going to Eastern Main Road, we have our Section 3 and Section 4 notices. We've placed that in the public domain already. So we are in the process of acquiring those lands. We are also in the process of acquiring lands from the end of the construction to Eastern Main Road, what we call our connector road. So we've placed Section 3. We've not done the Section 4s yet because we are waiting on the CEC. In terms of the eastern side, of the western side, where we are coming from Sierra Highway to Kumutu Road, we have also served Section 3 notices. Our process, our policy is that we will not move forward until the CAC is granted. So while we are setting the stage for the land acquisition, we are actually waiting the CEC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. And Chairman, in relation to the Toco, the Valencia to Toco Road, could you give us an update on that, please?
Okay, so the Valencia to Toco Road, it will be a hybrid of greenfield construction, new construction altogether, and upgrading of certain sections of the existing road. So we had that designs, the designs were completed, and the CEC application has been submitted. So we are awaiting, well, and the EIA that was required has also been completed. So we are awaiting the deliberations of the EMA on that score. But the designs have been completed. Once we get that CEC, we can, with government's approval, we can go out to tender for sections of that road as far as the construction works are concerned.
And just to shift off the highways a bit to the fast ferries, could you give us the update on how things have been going with the APT James and any update on the Booker?
Well, the APT James is in service. It is doing a daily service, except on Wednesdays, complementing the service of the TT Spirit. So we have both the TT Spirit and the APT James conducting or performing that sea bridge service now. And so far, we have not had any major problems with the performance of the APT James. As far as the Buku Reef is concerned, the Buku Reef set out on its journey, delivery journey or voyage on the 21st. Shortly after doing so, it developed a problem. And the problem was one of the main engines was overheating. So the master decided to turn back, although he was told, well, he can go ahead, and that could be attended to subsequently. So, but anyhow, he turned back to have it sorted out, and we were in agreement with that. Upon its return to Hobart, that is where the shipbuilder's yard was in Australia, they did a troubleshooting and found that there's a problem with the cooling water pump. Actually, there was a leak on it, and they set about checking out that pump. And I might add that all those works are being done under guarantee. So they got in touch with the original equipment manufacturer, that is MAN, because MAN is the manufacturer of the main engine. MAN attended, and they removed that pump, replaced certain parts of the pump, and reinstalled the pump. Upon sea trial, they found that another pump had sprung a leak. So they did a similar service on that second pump. And what they found out was that the filter on those pumps were being clogged with foreign matter. And the thing about it is those foreign items, sludge or whatever it is, in that environment there, high pressure, high temperature, they are very abrasive. So that is what was causing the seals of the pumps to be damaged. They then decided to replace all those pumps. So all 4 pumps were being replaced, and they had to be shipped from Germany. And that took a while because of the restrictions on the restrictions caused by COVID. So the new pumps arrived last Thursday. Those pumps are being installed now, but before they are installed, they were the technicians were instructed to flush all the engines, just to make sure that there are no other foreign items or foreign, in the cooling system. So the engines have to be flushed, the new pumps have to be installed, and then they will do a sea trial to see how well that worked. And it's then and only then we'll be able to resume the delivery journey. That should be sometime towards the end of this month. And of course, subject to the repairs being successful.
I have a couple of questions from Member Mark and Member Lee. Member Lee.
Thank you.
Chairman, you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Just 2 follow-up questions, Chairman George. As far as land acquisition, in respect to the QREP flyover, interchange, and ancillary work, could you give us an update of where we are at NIDCO is at with land acquisitions in respect to that QREP flyover, interchange? Anything is outstanding? And I want to be specific in respect to what I would call the Kate Donner movie area, cinema, that land acquisition. And I have another follow-up question in respect to the fast ferries.
Well, the land acquisition as far as CREP was concerned, overpass is concerned, that was handled by the ministry because, those works started many years ago. So the ministry was responsible for that land acquisition. My understanding is, well, the flyover has been built. So in cases where offers were made to persons interested and where they were not satisfied, well, the Land Acquisition Act allows them to take the matter to the High Court. In cases where that existed, they are probably doing that, but they would have requested the 80% payment, 80% of what was offered by the state. Well, in that case, the commissioner of valuation, whatever he offered, they are entitled to 80% of that as a down payment. So they would have requested that. We would have taken possession, we'd have done the works, and the value, the final value is being, in those cases where there was not agreement, the final value is being sorted out in the court. So that's.
So can I have a follow-up, Chairman George? If you're not aware, as you just mentioned, that those land acquisitions in respect to the CREP might have started prior to you, and it might have fallen under the Ministry, I assume the Ministry of Works and Transport. We have a representative in the Ministry of Transport. Maybe they can add some clarity to what is the status and the value.
We've lost Member Lee, but I expect what he was going to ask was whether he could get some elucidation from the Ministry of Works and Transport on the point.
That's correct, Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, Chairman. Member Lee?
Yes.
If you could repeat the question, it would be appreciated.
What is the status of the land acquisitions value? As what Chairman George had just mentioned, it would have fallen under the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Yes.
And if you had come up with a value, especially with that K-Donna area, movie area specifically, any other lands that are outstanding, and what is really the status of those values of the land outstanding as we speak?
Right. So as Member George indicated, it was handled by the Ministry's legal department. We did serve Section 3 notices. They were published, and the Ministry was allowed and NIDCO to enter in terms of undertaking construction. We are at various stages in terms of actual compensation. There are individuals who would have accepted the value as given by the Commissioner of Valuations, and there were some that we are still in negotiations with. In terms of the actual values, we can submit that to you in writing where possible. In relation to the K-Donna issue, those lands were leased lands, and that is being handled by the Commissioner of State Lands and the Commissioner of Valuations.
Okay, thank you. Just another follow-up, Chairman Vera, with respect to Member Foster, as far as the fast ferries, the new fast ferries, the APT James and the Bucco Reef, I just want to ask Chairman George, if those two vessels are identical, I don't know if they're, and I have a follow-up question on that. I just want to find out if the Bucco and the AP James are identical fast ferries.
No, they aren't identical. The APT James, the length of the APT James is 94 meters. The length of the Bucco is 100 meters. The carrying capacity, the Bucco carries 1,000 people. The APT James is at 926. The speed, however, very close, 38, 39 knots. So there are aspects that are very close. I mean, the engines, for example, are identical. The main engines are identical. Right. The generator, identical.
All right, and that's the follow-up question I wanted to ask Chairman George. That the engines that the problems that with the overheating and the coolant pump situation that we are having with the Bucco, And if it's identical more or less to the AP James, why we did not have those issues with the AP James as compared to what we are having now with the Buku Reef? That's my question.
If I might be permitted to use an engineering assessment, I will say the workmanship on one might have been different. So those people who did the APT James, they might have been more thorough in the flushing out of their engines before they installed the pump, those 4 pumps. But in the second case, things fell through the crack, and maybe the pumps were installed on engines that were not properly flushed. That's my best assessment of what has happened with the Buku Reef, and not really indictment on the engines per se, but it would probably have to do with the workmanship.
Okay, and a follow-up and last question, Chairman George. Given that, and that's a valid assessment in my view also, given that now that you feel that the workmanship of the vessels might be different, I am hoping that the NIDCO, through you, would ensure that when the Buku Reef sets out, that a thorough inspection is done for the taxpayers of this country. That's just a statement, and I'm looking for some guarantee from NIDCO that will ensure that the proper checks and balances were done. I think the master was correct in taking back the vessel to the manufacturer. Could you, I mean, if he had continued the voyage, it could have been worse. And so it was a good decision on his part, but I just want to follow up to ensure that NIDCO follows up and ensure that the taxpayers get value for their money with the Buku Reef. Thank you.
Well, I don't know whether that's a statement, but or just a question, Mr. Chairman. But if it were a question, I will confirm that NIDCO is indeed following up. In fact, we have a consultant on the ground in Australia looking at our interests. He's a marine engineer that we used previously, so he is there looking at the interests. And I might also add that the manufacturers, the manufacturer of the engine, MAN has been very cooperative. So they have not been, as I said before, they are all works done under the guarantee period, and they have not been too problematic in sort of supplying the parts, deciding to change parts, and all those things are happening sometimes based on our requests. And we have also requested at the end of the day, we want a sea trial, and that sea trial will be witnessed by our man on the ground. And of course, we will be furnished with the records of that sea trial. And those must be to everyone's satisfaction before the Buku Reef sets sail again. So yes, we are taking those steps.
Thank you. Before I go to Member Leonce, I know Member Mark had 2 quick questions to just pose.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, are you hearing me?
We are hearing you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Herbert George if he can share with us what is the current cost of this first phase of the Churchill Roosevelt to Manzanilla Highway. That is the one between Komuto and Guayco. If you could quickly tell us what is the current cost and how soon it will be completed and how soon the public will have access to use of that particular road.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have to refer to the document that we submitted to get that information because it is there, and unfortunately, I did not retain it. So
Okay, well, no. If it's there, I will. I'm sorry. I'll get it. All right. May I go on quickly to another question, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Herbert George, coming down to the fast ferries. Can you indicate to this committee what is the total payment of taxpayers' dollars that we have made as a down payment for the acquisition of these two vessels in total, as well as what is the precise amount of monies that we have borrowed from the Export Insurance and Finance Corporation of Australia to deal with the balance that we would not have been able to meet as a country, given, as you said, our parlous economic and financial circumstances. Could you share with us quickly?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I cannot speak to what the government of Trinidad and Tobago borrowed from the Australian government. That was not done through NIDCO per se. What NIDCO would have done would have met with those builders, ensured that they got our spec sheet, and the builders would have addressed the spec sheet, given us, submitted tenders, and we would have advised the government on what those persons tendered through draft cabinet notes. And they would have approached the government to get the loans required to build those vessels. So I do not have that information. What the other information, sorry? The other information.
No, you right. You proceed, Mr. George. You can proceed, Mr. George.
Oh, okay. Yes. I will. The other information that that a member is seeking, Mr. Chairman, I have it is given in Appendix 3A, page 4 of 4, and it will be under item 19.
All right. Well, yes. Mr. George, I know that the chairman has to proceed to someone else, but may I ask, did NIDCO, through the Ministry of Finance, provide advance payments to both Austal and INCAT for the construction, design, and procurement of engines of these two vessels? And I'm asking, what would have been the total amount of monies issued by NIDCO to these two shipbuilders at the time of the government's intervention to approach EFIC to get the remaining amount, which, as you said, is not your business. That's the Minister of Finance. But your business would have been submitting and advancing advance payments. Could you tell us what is the total amount of monies that the taxpayers paid through NIDCO to these two shipbuilders for those two catamaran fast ferries?
Okay, the advance payment, member, was not separate from the overall cost of the vessel. So if an advance payment were given, that payment would have been rolled into the cost or rolled into the price that was eventually sort of agreed. So when we
I don't think you're, Mr. George, not understanding my question. My question is a simple. My question is very simple and straightforward. NIDCO would have advanced certain monies to both shipbuilders during the course of the construction. You have documentations and records of what you would have advanced to those shipbuilders. All I'm asking on behalf of the committee is how much monies would NIDCO have advanced to these shipbuilders for the construction of these vessels? That is all I'm asking.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman,
Can you put that in writing first, sir? Can you put that in writing
that's better
first?
because I'm not understanding the question. So we're going to seek clarification and we'll put it in writing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before we move on to Member Lizama Leasing, I just had a question from another senator. She would like to know, are there any other lands to be acquired for the airport expansion in Tobago, specifically lands for the access road? If yes, have persons already been given notice? If no, how much notice would these clients be given?
Okay, there will be lands to be acquired for the access road. At present, though, the land acquisition that is being pursued has to do with the construction of the terminal building, and even there we have I think 22 properties there to complete the acquisition. But there is also another part of the area to be acquired. That was, I think, it's a 12-acre block that was already vested in the state, but the state did not take possession. And in 1996, I think it was, the state did not take possession. So what is happening there now is our people on the ground have been authorized to conduct negotiations with the person interested there on the various, on that block, to arrive at costs or value for their shuttles, and those will be but that is ongoing now. So we have two sets of land issues taking place on that project now. One has to do with 22 persons, or 24, I said 24 persons that where we are working through the process to settle with them and to take possession of their land, and the other is with that 12-acre block where the private treaty negotiations are going on now for those people to reach an agreement for their shuttle, and then they can move out and we can take possession of that 12-acre block as well.
Thank you. And the senator also wants to know what lessons, if any, were learned from the land acquisition for Tobago.
Land acquisition land acquisition seems to be bringing up some standard lessons repeatedly. One, people usually resist. They usually stonewall. They usually push back. That's their first mode of response. But we have been, so that kind of reinforces the process that we use, where we'll set up a satellite office in the area so that people can come in, we can talk with them, we can advise them as to what they can do, what their rights are, and how we'll be proceeding with the work. So that is firmly entrenched. The other lesson that we keep getting over and over is where the state valuer might give a certain value for a property, and the persons interested, they seem to be they become very maybe reluctant to accept initially, because maybe that's a bargaining position that they take to extract or to get as much for their property as necessary. So then there is the time it takes to acquire properties that could be long. And even though the law allows, because when a Section 4 is given, Section 4 really allows the acquiring authority to take possession, but then we have not been pursuing the letter of the law as such. We have been using the spirit, where we tend to want to negotiate with the persons interested, get to some agreement, and then take possession. And even where we do not get to the agreement, they will move on and use the other options of going to the court, and we will make it known to them that they are entitled to, if they will so apply, to 80% of the offer that the COV would have made to them. So those are standard things that we are seeing with almost wherever we have gone to acquire property. And
So you use
sorry?
Sorry to interrupt you, but so you prefer to use a soft approach rather than a hard-nosed approach?
Yes, that's what we have been pursuing for the most part.
But that soft approach could cause delay in the completion of projects.
Yes, it can. So we do have that option, because after Section 3 and a Section 4 is given, now a Section 4 has currency for 6 months. So within that period, if one wants to use the hard-nosed approach, one can use it. And maybe what it really tells us is that the acquisition can probably be scheduled for a little earlier than the start of construction. So give it some, treat it as a long lead item that we'll have to start early, or much earlier than the actual planned construction start date.
Thank you. And thank you, Member Lizama Leasing, for your patience. You may now ask your questions.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. Members, good morning again. I want to take us back to the report. Thank you, NIDCO, for this wonderful document. It's very detailed and very intense, but I have some questions that I'd like to ask, please. And these questions are based around your organizational structure, your corporate strategic plan, etc. I've noted that you had a corporate strategic plan that was for the period 2016 to 2020. Have you achieved what you have set out in that corporate strategic plan? And how do you plan to move forward? Are there plans underway for a new strategic plan, or are there outstanding elements from the strategic plan that you would need to revisit and to build upon? And probably I'd stop there, because then the other things are otherwise. So that is to the chairman of NIDCO. Mr. George.
Oh, yeah, thank you, member. With the chairman's permission, I should like to defer to the president.
President, sure.
Yes.
Thank you, member. No, we have not achieved everything we expected to achieve in our strategic plan, partly because we were idealistic and we really thought we could move mountains quickly. We've learned we can't, but our core requirements remain, and that will be taken over into the next strategic plan. We have basically four, what I would like to call objectives. We want to improve our viability, our financial viability. That's going to be with us for as long as NIDCO is in existence. So we will continually work on that. We didn't quite make the target that we wanted because we've moved from a position of loss into a position of gain now. So we're getting there. We've succeeded in our $40 million. We've got that. And you can see that in our revised and improved financial statement, where we are making a profit of 16 million. So we're moving forward in that. In terms of our processes, COVID has taught us a lot of lessons, and we are going to be integrating those processes and the things that we've learned in improving how we approach projects and what we demand of ourselves and what we demand of our contractors and our consultants. The third one is our approach to corporate compliance issues. As the FC would have said, we have our financial statements in which we are trying to make sure we are up to date in that. That's the biggest bugbear we have there. And in terms of our human resource productivity, we are changing our performance appraisal system. We've started to do business continuity planning so that we can get the human resource to understand that their survival is tied into NIDCO survival. So in terms of our new strategic plan, yes, we will start that by March this year, but it will follow along the same lines with the lessons that we've learned from the past strategic plan.
Member Lizama, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, Chairman. So now that I have the president's attention, I'd also like to ask her, please, when I was looking through your SWOT analysis of your internal environment, one of the weaknesses identified would have been authority is heavily concentrated in the office of the president and there's undue pressure. Could you expand on that and just let me know what has been done to rectify that? Because that would obviously cause a severe level of sluggishness in the organization. And beyond that, I also noted that while technically competent, some managers require additional training in organizational and people structure. I know you touched people management, sorry, I know you touched on that just now, but have steps been taken to ensure that your managers have received sufficient training to bring them up to scratch so that the organization can function as effectively as possible?
I smile because you've given me a perfect opportunity here to plead my case. The office of the president, yes, there's a lot of control exercise in the office of the president, but we have a lot of delegation of authority also. Our managers are expected to manage, and therefore they are required to do what is necessary to keep their decisions in keeping with the corporate plan for NIDCO. So it is not an arduous task for the president because the president demands what is required of the management team. In terms of organization training, yes, we have started to do our upgrade of our organization training. In fact, quite recently, we bought a specific book, which I find quite interesting, Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done. And in fact, all my managers are actually reading that now. And we will be coming to the table to, I mean, that's kind of informal, but we are also doing formal training. We've sent our folks on enterprise risk training. So yes, we are taking this quite seriously in training our managers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And now I move to the Chairman of the Board of Directors, please. In this submission from NIDCO, on page A76, there was a special assessment undertaken by the Board of Directors. And I must say I was quite flabbergasted by some of the findings coming out of this special assessment, which would have been done in October 2015. And for those of you who do not have the document, permit me please to just mention some of the things here. Minimal funds available in the company's bank account. NIDCO moved from 266 million in 2013 to 103 million in September of 2015. Escalating operation costs from 25.3 million in 2010 to 66.1 million in 2015, mainly due to personnel costs. And I have a very sincere concern about that, about the fact that the increase in expenditure has to do with personnel as opposed to what your core competency is. We talked about in this special assessment, I've noted a net loss of 28 million for the financial year ending 2015, which eliminated the limited reserves accumulated in the past years. You have debts of 313 million. Of course, this is dated October 2015. Irregular payments on contracts, poor HR practices, non-adherence to policies and procedures, and non-adherence to rules and regulations as outlined in the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. Now, this is very critical, and we must pay attention to this because this is not a position we must ever expect to find NIDCO in again. And so can I ask you, Chairman of the Board of Directors, what remedies have been done to make sure that NIDCO will never find itself? I suspect it would have been, you would not have been the chairman at that point in time during that period prior to October 2015. But NIDCO had found itself in a really, really bad place, which I suspect is what ties into why you're a little behind in some of your audited statements, etc. And I'd really like to get an explanation from you as to where NIDCO is going now and how you've pulled yourself out of this situation, because this was not acceptable.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Well, it's a lot of things that we have to be looking at the same time. In fact, that report helped to inform our decision when we did to do that right-sizing operation. What we are trying to ascertain then was whether the high costs, recurrent costs on personnel, whether that was justifiable. And that we felt that it might not have been, but before we could make that decision, we thought that we wanted hard information. So we embarked on the right-sizing exercise. Having completed the right-sizing exercise, and we are now thinking, okay, so we have a structure that is lean and that can engage the activities that we have before us. We try to instill on our project managers that they need to own the process, own the jobs. We have assigned that they have assigned to them. They must not just be satisfied in being the monitor, acting as a conduit of information, let's say from site to some other place, but they have to really take ownership of the job. So they have to be more, equally concerned, or maybe more concerned with outcome rather than just process. And that is creeping in. We also looked at the policies and we decided that policies must be written so that people must know what is expected so that they can act appropriately. So, and we also found that out too, the need for that by looking at the enterprise risk management policies that we're trying to adopt. And I know the VP engineering, he has been, working because, engineering is our core activity. He has been working assiduously on getting that policy document together so that all members of his department will be apprised. They will know exactly what is expected of them. So it is that. We have also looked at the whole thing about enterprise risk. And we are really trying to have it as part of our decision-making in the organization. I'll give you an example. We had said earlier that we want to increase our offerings. So we thought of doing some designs. And when that was looked at from the enterprise risk management lens, we felt, but listen, you are exposing yourself to a design risk that, and that is real. So one of the mitigating measures, we said, okay, if we do designs at all, let us limit the quantum of or the value of the project. So we shouldn't go beyond, let's say, about $5 million. So we will start there and we can grow that facility, as things take root. So yes, we are using many approaches to address those difficulties. The one that we have not been able to successfully address, because it's not totally in our power to sort of address, is let's say the rate of payments. Payments can be sluggish at times. And when I say payments, not just to us, but to contractors, and that we have been working along with our client, trying to give client the information required, give them reminders, and in some cases, they do respond, but the receipt of payments at time could be, is a bit sluggish. So basically, that's where we are, and working down those issues that you referred to in that document that you read.
Thank you very much. And Chairman, if I can just ask one more question, Chairman Vera, I just have one final question to ask, please, and it just ties into policy. I've noted that you've developed a whistleblower protection policy, and I just wanted to know how has that been used, and what have been the effects, if any? And you said that your VP engineering is also developing a policy, and any other policies that are in train. Do you have a time frame within which we can expect those policies to be developed, adopted, and implemented?
Okay, the whistleblower policy has been developed, has been implemented, and it is in place. And well,
has it been used as yet? Sorry to interrupt you. Has it been used? Has anyone come forward using it?
I don't recall. No. Apparently, those who are engaged here are probably well behaved. So there has not been a need to use it yet, but they all know that it is there. And it's a case of Big Brother is watching you. So people probably are being constrained by the fact that, if they misbehave, it will be stovepiped up to the board and others, to sort of take action. So that's as far as the whistleblower is concerned. The policies, the other policies, we have recently looked at, not recently, over the time, we have looked at several policies, some of which we have included here, but the procurement policy is one that is engaging our attention now. We have done the policy, bring it in alignment with the law whenever it is finally and totally proclaimed. And what we are working on now is the handbook to go with the policy. So that is one. There's also the thought to relook at the financial policy to see where there might be areas of weaknesses that we need to strengthen. So yes, we are looking at policies across the board, and no, I can't remember all those that we have sort of developed, but we are doing quite a number of them.
So can I just ask if you could submit that to us as well? If you can give us a status update on your policies when you're sending your written documents, please.
We shall so do, yes.
Thank you very kindly. Thank you, Chairman.
Member, if I could take my turn of questions before he comes. So I have about 3 different areas that I would like to question. One is to do with policy about your infrastructure. Another one is about the water taxi. And then a third area will be regarding dispute handling. I would like, you mentioned in your documents that your role in national development and as a priority is a modern and efficient physical infrastructure. Is that right? Chairman?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I have seen that.
Right. So one of the troubling aspects of the Andrea Barrett tragedy was the use of a decoy taxi to lure her unsuspectingly. And I think this highlights a very real concern on the part of many women in our society about uncertain and unsafe transport. Would a safe, secure, and reliable mass transit system, for example, a rapid rail, be a safeguard for the thousands of our women commuters? And besides the safety factor, you spoke about the need to stimulate the economy and to employ people. Wouldn't that be one of the ways to generating jobs and providing this employment? Not for a cosmetic or handout project, but for a project that will yield real long-term benefits for the country. So I'm posing it as a question for thought, but wouldn't the construction and development of, for example, a magna track running from Sangre Grande to Chagaramas, from San Juan to Point Fortin, not provide a ready-made solution, a useful solution to some of these challenges?
Mr. Chairman, if I might be permitted to just give some of what I feel, talk about some of what I feel, although you warned earlier that we shouldn't. But I am totally in favor of a mass system like the rapid rail. And I basically think that we have not heard the last of it. It will come back again as long as there is, advocacy and, of course, funds. And there is there are funds to sort of carry out the project, because the last time it was attempted, the cost was what was maybe the bugbear in the whole thing. But I feel that that is a way that we will have to go, rather than just via these road networks. So yes, I am saying yes, and I'm saying so because of maybe my personal view of what we have here as mass transport.
Yes, and Chairman, well, it seems you're on the same page, because you now have very clean electronic railway systems, so there's less pollution. It would relieve congestion on our roads. It would be high speed. It would be safer for women. So it's certainly something that I think I would ask NIDCO to consider, since you are one of the advisors to government on infrastructural development. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask about, and talking about rapid rail, sorry. What about subways? Why couldn't we be ambitious and not imagine a subway from Hayland Park in Maraval exiting in the Savannah, or a subway from Cascade and St. Anne's exiting in Independence Square? Or what about a channel, Toco to Scarborough?
Glorious possibilities, Mr. Chairman. And we just, as I said, the advocacy must continue. And if we advocate the need for those things long enough, one day we will have the will, if not will, and maybe the funding to attempt those projects. But yes, all those are, viable considerations that we can make to address this whole mass transit situation.
Thank you. Now, I also wanted to ask about the water taxi, because I think that is a real success story. I know a lot of people use the water taxis from south to Port of Spain, and I expect that when the civil courts move to the waterfront, it's going to become even more attractive. My question is whether we are underutilizing the water taxi and whether we could be increasing some of the routes. So for example, whether we could not use the water taxi as was in the 19th century to connect coastal villages on the north coast and on the east of Trinidad. Couldn't we, for example, connect Central, South, and Port of Spain to Chaguaramas? So for example, on weekends and on public holidays, so families could take outings to the Chaguaramas Recreational Center and avoid all that traffic bottlenecking and carnage. What about using the water taxi to bring families and tourists from Port of Spain, from the cruise ship center to say La Brea, and then have the Pitch Lake as a tourist destination and develop La Brea as a corollary? What are your thoughts about the possibilities for water taxi?
Again, Mr. Chairman, those are not new. During the time that we have been here, I have known about maybe on 2 or 3 occasions, we have gone to, we were thinking of extending the service to Point, to La Brea, at least those 2 stops, and there was one at, is it Waterloo as well? We have looked at all those areas to see how very possible it will be to do that. I can remember going down to Point, looking at that area, I think by Clifton Hill there. And, we looked at the difficulties of both in there. And what was, it's not insurmountable, but it was an issue that one had to contend with. There is a gas line running along the beachfront. And if we were to both where we were thinking about, we'll have to find some safe way of straddling that line. But as I said, it's not insurmountable. But so the point I'm making, we have been looking at those possibilities to extend the service. And I think it will move from just looking at to doing something, as time goes on. I can also remember the Ministry of Tourism, I think. They had a a system in the past where they use the water taxis for excursions, I think, down the islands, you know, and that went for a while, and you know, the National Heritage people, I think it was. So they were using the water taxis to shuttle people to these sites down the island, and that was well supported. You know, we probably need to reintroduce that as well, so that you can find profitable use for those resources, you know, at the, you know, certainly at the, you know, on weekend when they are not heavily used. So you get better returns on your asset. So those are possibilities that are worth considering. And well, Mr. Chairman, you did say that we are advisors, but I just want to correct that we you know, we execute. We execute the policies. But yes, we can certainly give advice as concerned people who have the interests of the state at heart.
Thank you. And my final question really had to deal with the matter of dispute handling. In your reply, you had said that litigation is usually contract related, but you also said that your contracts are FIDIC. Now, I know that in FIDIC, there is use of the DAB, the Dispute Adjudication Board. Can you tell me whether that does obtain in practice? And if so, how does it operate? How do you find it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it does operate. In fact, just about 2 years ago, not last year, year before, we had a matter that was decided using the DAB. It is, you know, it is long and drawn out, but I think at the end of the day, one gets a resolution even much sooner than one would have had one gone to court. So yes, it is used. And in fact, with the OAS project, we are now in front of the LCIA, the London Court of International Arbitration. And that, again, is an application of the DAB that was present in the contract that we had with OAS, who were the original contractors on the extension of the Sir Solomon Hochoy Highway to Point. So it is being used, and maybe to our credit, we sort of work with our contractors, and not many of them see the need to have recourse to the DAB.
And the real advantage, I believe, with the DAB is that in the traditional situation, when you go to court for breach of contract, the project stops. But with the DAB, you are able to continue the project whilst effectively dealing with the dispute. So that's an advantage there, wouldn't it be?
That is quite true. In fact, the one that I spoke about that we had about 2 years ago, the project was actually completed and handed over. And, you know, before the DAB, you know, before the contractor referred the matter to DAB, because he felt that he was entitled to more money in terms of extra work done than we were offering. So yes, it's, it is an advantage. The work is allowed to continue, the work continues, and one then have that recourse to the DAB. Well, in the case of the OAS job, well, they were terminated. But generally, what you have said, Mr. Chairman, is correct.
So I'm going to go to a second round of questions now. Member Leonce is not available at the moment, but what I'm going to do, I will ask Member Gopi Schoon to go first, then Member Foster, then Member Mark, Member Lee. Okay, Member Gopi Schoon.
Thank you, Chairman. When we were discussing the question of accountability, I mentioned that I wanted to move on to value for money. And in a sense, some of the questions have been asked surrounding value for money with regard to personnel, and making sure that you have the best personnel, the most experience and so on. But it's a very, I want to go a little wider in terms of giving us some assurances in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of your operations, in the procurement of goods and services, in your tendering practices. And I know I'm going a little wide, but in ensuring too that there's quality in the work that you do.
Okay, we at NIDCO, we embrace that wider concept of value for money. So yes, we look at costs, we look at quality, and we look at sustainability as well. So as far as cost is concerned, not only do we have that tendering process that we guard zealously, but we also are very mindful that we need to maintain the integrity of the process. So at the end of the day, whenever we tender for any item of work, we get the best, the right bidders bidding for the job. And so far, we have had no shortage of vendors bidding for our jobs whenever we go to tender. So we have that competition there. As far as quality is concerned, we are very careful on the, with the sort of specifications that we produce, whether it is performance-based or conformance-based. We are very careful so that, well, usually in our highway projects, it might be more conformance-based. But in areas like, let's say, when we were purchasing the new build, a lot of it was performance-based, so that we were saying, listen, we want a vessel that can go 39 knots or whatever, 39 knots. So that is our performance criteria. And everybody had that. They were quite clear on that. And as a result, they were able to sort of tender on providing us with a vessel to give us that speed. So I'm saying, yes, we're very concerned about the quality, and the way we handle that is by, giving the sort of a specification to vendors, at tender, and tenderers, that will really guide them in the preparation of their bids. And sustainability is also quite important, because we are also concerned about protecting our local ecosystem. Just that Tobago job, the Tobago job is being done, and we are seeking LEED certification for that job. And LEED is the acronym for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and they are very well. Of course, it was developed by the USGBC, that's United States Green Building Council. So and they are very concerned about areas like design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the facility. They deal with, so we're looking at, so that is being pursued in this new project in Tobago. So we are also concerned about sustainability in our construction jobs that might not readily lend themselves to the use of LEED per se. We take concepts from there to guide our activities on our projects. So dust control, sedimentation control, erosion, all those areas are areas that we give active consideration to in terms of sustainability. So yes, in under value for money, we sort of attend to all those aspects that are usually considered as part of value for money.
Thank you very much. In terms of the quality of our roadworks, because you are responsible for many highways and so on, how do we measure to international standards?
Mr. Chairman, if I might be permitted, I want to defer to Mr. Garib Singh, who is the VP of Engineering, so he can enlighten us there.
Hello, thanks for your question. NIDCO follows international standards for highway construction. Our designs are done to the US standard. Geometric design standards are followed. In terms of construction, our specifications also meet the US standard. We again follow the document in terms of the specifications. Our materials are expected to meet or exceed those specifications, and in many instances, they are in excess of these specifications. We look at the process of producing and placing those materials very carefully. For example, if we are utilizing aggregates, we look at the production of those aggregates from the quarry, stationary quarry, the way they are transported, the way they are stored on site, the way they are laid down. We have a quality assurance process in place. The contractors themselves have a quality control responsibility. We in NIDCO have a quality assurance responsibility. We, in many instances, would hire competent, in all instances, competent engineers, independent engineers to oversee to ensure rather that the quality standards are met. Where we are supervising directly, we also hold ourselves to the same standard as if we were hiring, as if we were an international consultant. So at all levels, at every step of the way, in every activity, NIDCO meets and exceeds the standards set out in the international documents. Thank you.
May I just ask a quick follow-up? Concrete versus asphalt. Is that black and white, or are those, I'm sure you consider those. Could you just give a little response to that?
Yes. We have in the past looked at utilizing concrete as a replacement for asphalt in road construction. But in terms of the cost of the pavement, initial cost, it's certainly more expensive, although there may be a case for life cycle costs in the longer term. The second issue that we would consider is also the availability of materials. For Trinidad, we have our own bitumen, we have our pitch lake, we have our own quarries. So it's in terms of cost, it is also, it's cheaper for us as well. The industry is extremely familiar with the utilization of bituminous pavements. We would have to actually retrain our contractors and retool in terms of equipment as well if we were to go to concrete type pavements. So both can work in Trinidad. There's no dispute about that. However, the industry is very experienced in the production and the construction of flexible asphaltic pavements.
Thank you. And of course, cost is a major concern. Thanks a lot. Chairman, I'll pass over.
Thank you. Member Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman. I know, Chairman, that you indicated earlier that you were going to ask a question concerning the water tax. I don't want to repeat that. I don't know if you asked the question, but I wanted to get an update in terms of the upgrade and expansion of the water taxi. Was that question posed before? Did I miss it?
It was from a different direction about the policy directions of water taxi, but please follow up, Member Cummings.
Yes. To the chairman, could you please give us some information regarding the water taxis and what is the plan with the upgrade and expansion of that service? And I have another question on another matter afterwards.
Well, as far as the water taxi is concerned, as I indicated earlier, there are good reasons why we should look at extending the services in the first instance to places as Point and maybe Le Bris, so that you could really cover a wider part of the country. But that decision has not been placed before us yet as a job, so we are just maybe thinking through things and suggesting that that's a good way to go with the water taxi.
In your response, there's a fleet upgrade mentioned. Is that on the cards?
I don't know whether the fleet upgrade referred to maybe maintaining the 4 water taxis that we do have, because we have spent a lot of time and resources on those vessels, and to the point where we now have 3 vessels seaworthy and operational, and there is one on which we are still doing some work. And the water taxi was victim of that all-pervasive tendency for us to get a item, use it when it is new, and don't think of maintaining at all. And at the end of the day, it is of no use to anybody. So the water taxis once had that problem where even if they were being maintained, the maintenance were not as enlightened as it should have been. All right, they basically wait for breakdowns and then try to fix breakdown. But we have taken on a different approach. We have recruited personnel so that we can conduct a more preventive maintenance program on those vessels, to the extent where we now have 3 vessels functioning, and that last vessel will be brought back on stream presently.
Chairman, I must say that I'm quite pleased that the NIDCO has been able to utilize a lot of local contractors. I'm referring particularly here to the Point Fortin, completion of the Point Fortin highway. And all those packages went to local contractors, which I think, augurs well for the development of our local skills and contractors. But tell me, how are the smaller or medium contractors at all involved in benefiting from work coming out of NIDCO? Is it just focused on the large contractors, or is there some way or mechanism that the smaller contractors get opportunities through?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with regards to the use of the contractors, the work packages down at the extension of the Solomon Huchoy to Point, I might just say that NIDCO is very, very faithful in carrying out the undertaking given to it by the government. The government wanted those works to be done using the local talent that we had. As a result, those work packages were done so that they do not become too large in terms of value, so as to frighten away our local people, because that was the trend, or that would have been the result if we had gone for just larger packages. So yes, that's a policy that has worked, and it really came from the government. Now, how do we intentionally engage the smaller contractors? Unfortunately, outside of just these work packages, there is nothing that we as the executing arm can really do on some of our packages. There are smaller things like bridges, well, you have bridges, you have landslips, you have drainage, some of these projects, they are of smaller value. So smaller contractors may get involved there or could get involved there. But so that when we go to tender, we might have to place limits. And I am not sure that we are at a point yet where we will want to do that, having regard to the fact that we in a climate of scarce resources, so we want to sort of use it to the best possible advantage. What we have been doing, though, is that as we go to tender, we have been using a system of open tendering for most of our projects, not be buying anybody who feel they have the competency and the ability to engage the projects that we tender. But even that might be a problem because, you see, we will use all sorts of financial metrics, asset ratio, return on investment, all those kinds of things, when in our assessment of the tenders that come before us, because we do ask for financial statements, 3 years, audited financial statement. You might find some of the smaller contractors may not, or even medium-sized contractors may not have that to submit. And then when those things come in, we start looking at what return on asset, net profit margin, current ratio, debt to, so all those things, could probably work against the smaller and the medium-sized contractors. So we might have to intentionally, not just, this is an area that we have to tread cautiously because, but we might have to, intentionally do things to give them an advantage in our tendering. But as it is now, no, we don't have that facility to really allow them. If they tender, they might be scuttled by the larger and more established contractors.
May I ask Member Mark if he has any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a host of questions. I may even ask you to bring back NIDCO. But let me deal with what I can because I know you have given us a time limitation to deal with some of these issues. First of all, may I ask NIDCO to provide to this committee in writing copies of the 2 shipbuilding contracts involving Ostal and Incat in respect of the APG James and the Boko Reef, respectively. That's the first area. Second area I'd like to ask NIDCO is I'd like them to refer to Appendix 3B of the current of various capital projects. I think on page 4 of Appendix 3B. Now, Mr. Chairman, if you go to that appendix yourself, you will see under what is called Tobago Marina Facility, Toco Port Facility, and of course, the Valencia de Toco roadway. I would like to ask Mr. Herbert George whether he can confirm that the total cost for the preparation of the EIA for the Toco Port Facility is what is stated here, 78,000 rather, 394,100. Can you confirm with this committee that this is in fact the final cost of that particular EIA, apart from the additional cost that you have just mentioned, amounting to 8 million?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I want to defer to the President, and she's going to tell us about the cost of the EIA Toco Board.
I'm not sure if I heard Member Mark, but on page 5, on the number 23, on the 22, that speaks to the contract costs for the conceptual design and EIA. There's a figure of 12,078,394. and that's made up of different elements. That's the payment, the contracts in respect of ERM, Aaron Bush, and ESL Consultants Limited. And
can you give us a breakdown, Mrs. Farmer, for the ERM West, along with the other one that you just mentioned, so we will know ERM West got so much for the EIA, for the Tobago facility, as well as the others?
It's of the order of $10 million. The ERM and ESL contracts combined were of the order of 10 million. And I am almost certain ERM will have been the order of 8 million. But I can confirm those because, as I said, that's a combination of 3 contracts there. I can get you the actual details of each of them.
No, did the EIA would have been conducted solely by the ERM West of the United States, or did they have local participants?
ESL is a local participant that would have assisted the ERM, the EIA consultant, and the conceptual designer of record would have also assisted in creating the document, the EIA document. So all 3 would have worked together in creating that EIA document.
Could you advise this committee who were the person that set up the terms of reference or formulated the terms of reference for the EIA consultancy?
The terms of reference will have come from the TOR that EMA will have given us. So we will have gone to EMA, they'll have given us a TOR in which the EIA had to be developed, and we will have used that to create our document for the ERM consultant.
Now, could you tell us how did...
Mark, if I could, because just for the record, I think many people may not understand what an EIA is. So if I could just...
environmental impact?
No, if I could just interject. So when one is applying to do a project development, and you're applying for what they call the CEC, the Certificate of Environmental Compliance, the EMA could ask for an environmental impact assessment to be prepared. That's the EIA. That environmental impact assessment is usually a very detailed scientific document that would treat with things like, if I suppose with the port, water flows, soil, how to impact fishing, and other things of that nature. So this would be detailed, it would be scientific, and it would have to meet the expectations and requirements of the Environmental Management Authority. Is that right, Mr. Chairman and Madam President?
That's correct.
Can I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Please do, Member Mark.
Yeah. I would like to ask Mrs. Farm, Madam Farmer, or Mrs. Farmer, President, how did we go about the selection process or the recruitment process for this particular EIA consultancy? Can you advise us?
At the point in time we were about to do this, all our local consultants were engaged in doing the EIA for CRH extension, Toco Port, not Toco Port, VTT. So we looked in international arena to see what we can establish. And our research found ERM, who had done considerable work in Trinidad and Tobago for the various oil industries. And we engaged conversation with them and then presented them with a tender for them to bid on.
Are you advising this committee that we did not have competitive bidding in this procurement of this particular company called ERM West?
We did a sole select.
What unique skills and, let's say, talents that this company would have brought that a local company could not have brought to the table? Could you advise this committee?
All the local companies were engaged, so it was not a matter of we chose someone foreign over someone local. We had no local. We have basically 2 local companies that we are involved in EIA. Both were engaged in other projects. in terms of competencies of ERM, their track records speak for them. I do not have the data in front of me here, but I know they're well established. Other companies in Trinidad have used them, and they came well, but let's say well appointed.
Well appointed,
highly recommended to the table.
Who are the people who highly recommended this company to the NIDCO?
We did our research, sir. So when we looked at the track record that they had and what they had done in Trinidad and Tobago, we thought, we as NIDCO, the big boys in the room, we thought they were quite well placed to do our EIA.
Madam Former President, how was the payment made? Was it made in full, or was it made partially, or at the end of the EIA as submitted by this company to the EMA, which apparently turned out to be extremely deficient?
Okay.
Can you advise us?
All payments are paid by IPCs. Any
when I say IPCs, could you tell us what IPCs mean?
Or interim payment certificate, sorry. So as the progress goes along, contractors or consultants are paid based on progress. In terms of EIA submission, it's never a one-off document. We did PTT. We've got 2 RARs. That's a local contractor, a local consultant, and sometimes the requirements from EMA are more detailed than we think, or they may shift their requirements. So what the EIA does is that we present what we feel the TOR is asking us for. The EMA will go through it. They will say, well, no, you didn't do that, or maybe you ought to have done that. We take it back, we go. In terms of the EIA for CREM, they wanted some more hydrological testing. We went out, we did that. We created some changes in design. So it's something like an evolution process. It's never one. So yes, ERM, the EIA for Toco would have got some RARs. You're talking about a very expensive port and with very challenging conditions that need to be met. So the EMA will have to be very detailed in what they want. And we will take each consideration, we'll address it, and we will send it back to EMA, and the process will continue. So it's not a
could you tell us, Madam Farmer President, whether the payment was made in the US and whether the complete payment has been satisfied?
Yes, the payment was made in the US, and yes, it has been satisfied.
Could you, Member Mark, I just wanted to, just arising from what you were saying, just to add for the public's edification that EIAs are ultimately driven by the Environmental Management Authority. And as information comes in, they say whether this is suitable or not. The other thing is that there's a public interest component in these EIAs. So they are published for public comment, and they're also scrutinized internationally. And when the EMA assesses all the information and feedback, it is at that point that they will decide whether they will grant a CEC or not. Is that right, President Farmer?
That's correct. That's correct. It's an ongoing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, as I said, I have a series of questions. Still, if you'll allow me a few moments. Could the President, rather, of NIDCO indicate to this committee why was this EIA continued if the project was shelved in May of 2020?
I am not aware the project has been shelved, sir.
You haven't read in the newspapers, but from the board, Mr. Herbert George has said in public, as well as the Minister of Works and Transport, that due to COVID-19, the Toco port facility project has been shelved, and that was in the Trinidad Guardian on May 2020, sometime in May of 2020. Mr. Herbert George is on record as saying this.
Mr. Chairman, if you might allow me, because I gather that the shelving of the project is being ascribed to Herbert George. If the word shelving were used at the time, shelving might have meant that progress on the job has been held up. It did not mean, it did not mean, and that the job will, that is it. We are not doing any more work on the job. And so I just want to put that.
Well, I think, Mr. George, Mr. George, with the greatest respect, you need to contact the Guardian of May 2020. I have the exact date in my system, but I don't have it, but I can give you that off the record.
Okay.
And correct that.
No, I know that this. I know this is a very interesting point, Member Mark. Member Mark.
I have one more area I'd like to clarify. If you
okay, please, because we have others waiting to join, and we do have a time limit. So please, if you can.
Yes. Could Mr. Chairman, through you, can I ask through you for the NIDCO to provide to this committee via our secretary a detailed breakdown of the costs that was in fact paid to this company called ERM West. We would like a detailed breakdown because I raised this question, Mr. Chairman, and Mrs. Farmer ought to know, since she's the president, as to how much money was paid to ERM West. I have a document before me which was circulated publicly, issued by NIDCO, signed by, I think, Mrs. Farmer, indicating that the total amount of money that was paid to this company was $10,997,000. So,
okay, Member Mark,
what I'm asking, what I'm asking, Mr. Chairman, is if the distinguished president can provide this committee with a breakdown of how this money was arrived at. That is what I'm saying. Mr. Chairman, I want to pause here, but I want to let you know I have
Mr. Chairman,
other questions.
I know, Member Mark, but you have raised your question. May I ask President Farmer that Member Mark's questions be answered in writing, if you can, if you could provide that information to us. How much was paid to REM? And also about if you could clarify the comment about whether the project had been shelved. If you could provide those details to us in writing, I would be grateful. Member Mark, Member Lizama Leasing has been waiting. I'm going to ask if she be allowed to put in her second round of questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for this opportunity. Chairman, I'm referring to Appendix 3A, Historical Review of Major Capital Projects which were greater than $25 million over the past 10 years. And I now turn to page 3. And at the last item there, item number 14, it speaks to the construction of the extension of the Solomon Hochoi Highway extension to Point Fortin. And the project cost at inception was projected at $5,213,893,000 with an expectation of a duration of 48 months. Under the remarks, Chairman, I noted here the design build contractor OAS completed approximately 54% of the works under its contract during the period 2011 to 2015. In 2016, NIDCO terminated the contract and the matter is before the London Court of Arbitrators. This comes up for hearing in May 2021. I want to know how prepared is NIDCO for this matter when it comes up in May, which is in just about 3 months or so, having seen the country having come out of this situation of a $5 billion cost project. And we all know what happened beyond that. So I just like to know NIDCO's preparedness for this matter.
Oh, the OS. Okay, NIDCO is very prepared. We have been working along with our attorneys, both locally and internationally, all along the period over which this has been before the LCIA. It has been a very drawn-out process because the claimant had lots of issues to respond to the schedules and so set by the LCIA. So while we were putting forward whether it is statement of our statements in defense, our values from our experts and things, they were not, because they were having some issues, but they are better organized now, and it seems as though the hearing will take place as we have indicated there. But yes, we are prepared for that hearing.
Okay.
Okay, Chairman, sorry, and I just wanted to ask Mr. George to keep Chairman George to keep this JSC updated when as the hearing proceeds, please. If you would provide us with a report coming out of that eventually, please. Thank you, because this is of great national interest.
Yes. Do you want to have it after the decision is, after the judgment, or when you say as it proceeds?
May I just interject here? I think the rules regarding sub judice would require that we would get it after the decision has been granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, Mrs.?
Thank you, Chairman. That was my last matter for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Lee?
Chairman, nothing at this point in time. I could give my 8 minutes to Mr. Mark.
Thank you. Member Mark? I think you're on mute, Member Mark.
Yeah, are you hearing me, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to ask Mr. Herbert George if he can provide this committee with a detailed breakdown of the Tobago Marina facility development, which was given by a company whose name is Aaron Butch and Associates Limited. I would like to ask, first of all, Mr. Herbert George or Mrs. Esther Farmer, whether this facility that is costing the taxpayers 55, is it 55?
Come back into the screen, please.
It's about $5 million, right, Mr. Chairman? It's costing us about $5 million. I wanted to ask the distinguished President whether we can get information as to the selection process or the tendering process. Was it the same approach that was taken in the case of the Toco facility? Was it sole select or was it competitive bidding?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, no, it was not sole select. It was selective tendering because we have practitioners in this country who have done port structures, and since what we were doing in Tobago, it is the conceptual design of the facility. We had competent people available to sort of carry out those services for us. And since there were more than one, we went selective tendering.
When you said you went selective tendering, are you saying, Mr. George, it was sole selective or was it competitive bidding for this particular procurement service?
Okay, what I mean by that is that we are practitioners in the industry, so we know which contractors, which consultant in Trinidad, for example, who have done port facility work before. So we will communicate with them, tell them that we have this tender and whether they are interested in sort of submitting a bid. And invariably they will say yes, and we will send off the documents to them. So at the end of the day, we will get submissions from more than one bidder, and we'll do an assessment, and we will make an award after.
Mr. Herbert George, can you tell me if this particular project was publicly advertised for personnel who are skilled in this marine area to bid for this $5 million contract? Or was it you getting on the phone and talking to people who you know are competent and they in turn would apply? Can you clear or clarify for this committee what is the process that was used to select this particular body?
Yes, and we will strike out about whether you were calling people personally. Can you just describe first the process that was used, please, Chairman?
So this job came up, and we had to find a designer to do the preliminary design for us. We have, well, prior to that, we did the Toco port, and we had it was 2 practitioners responding to the Toco port job. Oh, right. So we know who those persons are, and incidentally, I've been in the industry from 1975, and I happen to be an engineer, so I know it is not that port designer coming up overnight and just saying, okay, I could design a port facility, therefore I want to be considered. That is not how it is done. With due respects, we know who those persons are who will do port design facilities. And on the basis of that, we will send out an inquiry to those persons. And those persons will indicate whether they're interested, whether they want to send in a bid. And to the extent that they are interested, we will send documents to them and send them instructions, receive bids from those persons.
Mr. Herbert George, under the procurement law of this country, that is an infraction. You would be aware of that. You know that you cannot do things on a personal basis. When you're dealing with public monies, as you would know as a chairman, you put out what is called tenders that are advertised so that those persons that you are making reference to can then publicly apply via the tendering process. And then you have a tenders committee within your board subcommittee that would look into that. It is not the reverse that you are giving us here. I think that is extremely
this is not a question, but you've raised a point. So may I ask the chairman to just indicate the various forms of the processes used by your procurement department?
Mr. Chairman, with due respects, I know that all tendering is not open tendering. And even in the law, the new law, it makes allowances for selective tendering. However, those persons who you will use for selective tendering will be in a register kept by that body. So they'll have a listing, and you can go well. If you want a civil works contractor, you'll have the civil work contractors listed there, and you can go and put out your or issue your call to tender to those persons. So it is not that the new law will debar us, will prevent us from using that method of tender. They have, like I say, a registry there of those persons who are competent to do the various types of work. So you can use that. So as I said, it is not just something that we did willy-nilly and it's just, my say-so and everything just went on. We worked on the basis of knowledge in the industry. We worked on the basis of the experience that we have had when we went out in the past for bids. And we also work on the basis of the experience that we are, that we have. So that I think was not a reckless use of, let's say, selective tendering.
And it's not you making the decision personally, Chairman. Is it that you have a procurement department that handles this?
Oh, yes, we do. We have a tenders committee, as we outlined in the document. So it is not, a Herbert George says so. We have a tenders committee that presides, and Herbert George not even on the tenders committee.
Member Mark, we have got some time constraints. May I ask you to just raise your questions? We'll ask them to answer them in writing. And then I have some questions of the Ministry of Finance that I would like to ask. Member Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to get from the NIDCO officials, what is the actual cost of the new terminal building in Tobago? I got to have a document before me.
Member Mark,
Appendix 3B.
Member Mark, what we will do is we will write our questions to NIDCO and ask that they answer us, because we do have to stay on track with time now. So, Chairman, we will be sending some further questions for you to respond to. If I may, I just want to ask a couple of questions of the Ministry of Finance. Is the ministry satisfied with NIDCO's performance and its adherence to the manual and the SEPMM?
Chairman, if I may, in terms of the manual, the financial statements, the last audited financial statements were for 2017, and I don't think it is acceptable. I think that the board and management should at least put their heads together and try to address it. In terms of the other reports, the board minutes, the last board minutes submitted were for August 2020. So it could be a little better there. But for the other reports, they are basically.
Does the ministry agree with NIDCO's decision to implement an e-tenders system rather than the mandated e-auction portal?
In respect to that question, I think I'd prefer if you can put that one in writing.
Thank you. We note as a committee that the state enterprises do not generally use the e-auction portal. And so when you do your answer, is the e-auction portal operational? What are the shortcomings identified with the e-auction portal? And what is being done to encourage use of the e-auction portal in compliance with the SEPMM? Okay.
Yes.
A couple of questions of the Ministry of Works and Transport. PS, you heard the chairman's remarks about the mass transit system. Does the Ministry of Works and Transport have a view on mass transit?
Yes, Chairman. The Ministry of Works and Transport sees that the issue of mass transit is one that has to be undertaken. We note that, we have attempted this in the past and we were not successful with that particular method. There were a number of issues that came about, not the least being cost. It doesn't mean that the ministry has ceased in its endeavors to introduce a form of mass transit in Trinidad and Tobago. At present, we are in discussions with the IDB on a pilot project, which we had scheduled to be implemented last year. However, that was affected based on COVID, and we are working on it this year. We also undertaking projects under the PTSC in terms of the increase of our bus fleet to work along with the what we are doing with the IDB and also with the PTSC's increase in its overall services to be provided. So the short answer was yes, we do see mass transit as being a critical element for the future of the transportation system in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are working on the mechanisms to bring it about.
Thank you. And one final question. What is the ministry doing to assist NIDCO with the following challenge? The untimely receipt of payment for disbursement to contractors, which results in delayed payment to contractors.
Yes. So the ministry would get allocations for the projects under NIDCO, and as NIDCO presents the interim payment certificates, we would do our necessary due diligence and submit to the Ministry of Finance. In the instances where allocation in one project may not be sufficient to continue, we seek to review the allocation across all of our projects to reallocate where we can to ensure that there is allocation. So there are three things actually that we try to do to assist NIDCO. One, we make representation through the ministry to the Ministry of Finance in the budget exercise. Secondly, in the instances where allocation fall short, we try to reprioritize internally to try to increase allocation. And then as well, we seek to ensure that all the documentation that is provided by NIDCO, that we would be processed in a timely manner to the Ministry of Finance. And we make constant representation to the Ministry of Finance on their behalf.
Now, the Ministry of Works is, I would think, the primary client for NIDCO. How does the ministry view NIDCO's performance? Are you satisfied with their performance? How would you rate it on a scale from 0 to 10?
Well, in terms of NIDCO's performance, we did in the submission that is that was done by NIDCO, I believe there is a submission there from the ministry in terms of the last performance appraisal for the board, which was satisfied. We do see NIDCO as an integral partner of the Ministry of Works and Transport, and their performance to date has been or is seen as quite good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to now invite closing comments from Chairman and then from the ministry officials. Chairman.
Well, Mr. Chairman and members, we really thank you for the opportunity to have come here and answer those questions. We accept that we do spend public funds, and we need to have the checks and balances in place to satisfy or to give the assurance that those funds are well spent. So we welcome the inquiry that we have just had into the operation. We will undertake to treat with the written questions that come to us and to return them to you in short order when they do come. And we will continue to do our best to be the executing arm of the government and execute the jobs that are referred to us. We will seek all times to do so in a way that will get that one will get value for money. We will seek to do so in a transparent manner and in a cost-effective manner. And this is a commitment that we give to this committee and by extension to the nation as we strive and go forward to do our work. So once again, we thank you for having us come before you at this time.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Maraj from the Ministry of Finance, closing comments.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the invitation. The meeting was productive. There was a lot of takeaways, and I think it will inform how we interact with the state enterprise going forward. I know there are lapses in their compliance, and we'll work towards that end. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Frances Yearwood from the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Chairman, once again, thank you for having us today. The Ministry of Works and Transport is the line ministry for the National Insurance Development Company, and we can attest that that company has been working with us in a number of projects. We have a number of mechanisms by which we review the work of the company, and the company meets with us on a regular basis in terms of giving updates on projects and seeing how we can move forward in a productive manner. In that regard, we also know that there are challenges that the company would have from time to time, but we see evidence where the company seeks to put necessary mechanisms in place to get the compliant documents done on time and in a proper manner. So we want to thank you, Chairman, for having us today and for the manner in which you conducted the meeting today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our business today, and this meeting is now suspended. In closing, I wish to thank NIDCO, the ministries, the media, and the viewing and listening audience. Good day. Now I'll just call on the